Oh, that ran a little bit longer because I can't send the right link to the right person. And Anthony just got the link and he'll be on in any second. So, anyway, what an awesome way to start off our show. Hey, gang, it's Turner here with the Gimme the Loot podcast in the premiere episode of our Guest Quest show. So, as you know, we switched to a new streaming schedule this month, and we're running through a couple of different rounds of content. And the fourth week of the month, we'll always be taking the opportunity to speak with somebody who is either from the tabletop role playing community or from engaged in an activity that was heavily influenced by their time playing tabletop role playing games. For our very first episode, we're going to be speaking with Christian Stokes. Christian was the very first of two guests we've had on the podcast. The other one, Bob, has been extremely patient because his episode has still not aired almost a year later because I did not learn to not put heavy spoiler plot lines into third-party guest episodes. But Christian came on and starred in episode OX, and I'll explain what the heck that is, as Fromwick Fent, a gnomish investigator extraordinaire. Christian is an actor and stuntman and stunt coordinator who's worked in the industry for over 26 years. His credits include Leverage, Doom Patrol, Nashville, Chase, Alias, Monster. And this October, he'll be coming to the big screens in a movie called, help me out, Christian,
Demigod.
There we go. I had it written down and everything. He's been in dozens of tons of more stuff. He has appeared in major live stunt shows, from theme parks to directing performances for the Marvel Universe European Live Stunt Show Tour. He also performed in HBO's Game of Thrones Bleed for the Throne experience and HBO's Westworld Interactive experience right here at South by Southwest. He's done live stunt shows all around the world, as well as having been a stunt coordinator on a number of major network television shows, films, commercials, and more. Christian, welcome.
Hey, man, thank you. Look, this is where it all started. D&D, man. If it weren't for Dungeons and Dragons, I wouldn't have done any of that stuff.
Well, real quick, let's go around the horn and get talk about who else is here with us today. Guys from the Party of Five, say hello.
Hello. No, okay.
No, it's his first time. It's okay. It's every new show is like Moyle's first show. Andrew as Moyle Mossberg.
Oh, right. Jamie, who plays Eldrin Thaneros on the Give Me the Loot podcast. Frequent slayer of intros, just maybe not this one.
And I am Anthony, who plays Baba.
Cool. Oh, we got that. Throw that up there. So you guys can find Christian at Stoker Ace on Twitter. Christian, is there any other social media that you want to throw out there real quick before we kind of jump into it?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook. I do a lot of stuff on Facebook. My Instagram at Stokey Baby is a good one.
Cool. And we will throw some links up for that on our other socials as well. So real quick, man, let's go ahead and jump into it. Let's talk about your history with tabletop role-playing games. How long have you been playing TTRPGs?
Man, I've been playing specifically Dungeons and Dragons since 1982. So I was a kid, man. My mom and dad divorced and my mother moved to Dallas. And so I'm meeting all these new people in my life, and this dude had a room dedicated to the Monster Manual, the original hard print Monster Manual, where you had the Hobgoblin chain armor. He had all this stuff made up, man. It was so awesome. I was in, and I've been playing D&D since then. 1982, the original red box.
Yeah, that's kind of where I dipped my hands into it too. And yeah, the Dungeon Master, the original Dungeon Master guide, I think had a fire giant on it. But yeah, that original Monster Manual was pretty intense. So and so D&D was the first TTRPG that you played. That was, I think that kind of takes my next question. And that actually answers how you started D&D. What other, have you really messed with any other systems, or has it really just been all D&D all the time?
Oh, I played all kinds of stuff. Had a group of guys we grew up with that we were always playing games. I played dozens of games. Star Frontiers, which was a TSR game.
Yeah, I remember Star Frontiers.
I did Star Frontiers, Villains and Vigilante. Marvel superheroes, played the heck out of some Marvel superheroes. Let's see, there was Starfleet Battles. I played that. Twilight 2000. Vampire the Masquerade, and I guess most recently Pathfinders. So
Yeah.
tons.
Yeah. I just have started dipping into the Pathfinder realm. I picked up the Starfinder. They had the Starfinder starter box on a Humble bundle recently, and I grabbed that. And it's definitely a lot more rules than the current fifth edition.
It's 3.5, you know. I mean, it got crunchier and crunchier, and now they've done a second edition with Pathfinder that I haven't really dipped into, because at that point I'm like, well, I'm dipped back into D&D 5e, and I'm like, let's just hang with one system for the time being.
Yeah, it's, and it's not knocking it. It's definitely a cool system. I've always been kind of fascinated by sci-fi games, because I've played Rifts. I've played a couple of different sci-fi games, and they've just always seemed a little bit trickier to me to DM and to play, just because I don't know if it's the ship to ship combat, or if the nature of some of the systems. Like one of our big patron supporters is a big Shadowrun guy. Oh, wow. And the challenge for me was always, that's Lee. If I don't know if you're watching, Lee, or not, but the challenge for me with Shadowrun is there's always that portion where the hackers have to go into the virtual world, and it's like, okay, you've engineered a setting where we have to split the party at some point. Right. And with I recently played in a campaign based on The Expanse, which is big on ship to ship combat. Sure. And it's like, okay, I'm gonna hang out in the cargo hold while everybody else who knows how to actually fly the ship does their stuff. So I think there's some unique challenges with once you kind of get out of it. Not that I love superhero fantasy role-playing games. I mean, superhero RPGs. For some reason, I haven't run into the same issues as some of the sci-fi ones. So you've obviously done a lot of work kind of in the fantasy and horror genre. What fantasy movies or TV shows are you currently watching?
Well, obviously, Game of Thrones is big for me. I watched the Game of Thrones. I watched all of the Lord of the Rings stuff. I thought that was incredible. Some of the stuff that they brought to the screen. I've been watching The Witcher. I've enjoyed The Witcher. Yeah, that was a really. Yeah. I'm looking forward to the new season of The Witcher. What was the modern D&D Bright? I really enjoyed that movie as a modern D&D offering. So those are the main things. I do a lot of streaming based on what I'm auditioning for. Yeah. So I don't get to watch as much as I want to watch. Right. But The Witcher is the one I'm really excited about seeing come for the second season.
Yeah, man. I thought The Witcher was great. I watched like the first 15 minutes. There's a anime movie that just hit Netflix that like I said, I've just dipped into the first 15 minutes of it. It reminded me a lot of their Castlevania show that's been on Netflix recently, which is also superb, despite the issues with Warren Ellis that have come out. But yeah, man, it's tough once you start that you think you're going to have more time for that stuff as you get older, but it just you find you'd be surprised how much that time shrinks actually a little bit.
It's crazy because now there's so much content there. I mean, there used to be 3 networks, right? And then HBO and then Showtime. And now we've got all these streaming channels, man. I can't keep up with the amount of content coming out.
And it's weird because fantasy had a really strong, I think, cinematic cycle towards the late 70s, pre-Star Wars. I mean, you had obviously Excalibur, which was fantastic. And even, I think maybe even early 80s, because you have Lady Hawk, you have Willow in there.
Beastmaster.
You got the Conan movies. And then, man, it just hits a wall. And I think pretty much goes away until Lord of the Rings brings it back.
You're right.
I haven't watched any guys, rest of the podcast. Have you guys watched, who's watching Game of Thrones or has watched Game of Thrones?
I've seen all of it.
I haven't seen a single episode.
I read all the books and I watched the whole show.
Yeah, I am
completely different.
Yes,
I am one of those jerks that went, hey, you know what? I'm not going to watch the show until he finishes the books.
You'll be waiting for the rest
of
your life.
Exactly. And honestly, man, that my favorite. Now I take that back to where I might break on that is I guess they're adapting the Dunk and Egg storyline, and those were my favorite stories out of the bunch. Because they're smaller scale and more contained, and he still has kind of control of that narrative, or as opposed to the main storyline, it's just completely gotten away from him. I would bite the bullet and probably watch those if it was cast and done well. So, what other than The Witcher and Game of Thrones, are you listening to any podcasts? Is there any other TTRPG or fantasy or sci-fi content that you're really digging into right now?
Well, you know that I'm listening
Besides
to Give Me the
Game of
Loot.
Thrones,
You know
yeah,
it.
exactly.
And I got the guys here, so I got to say, guys, you entertain the hell out of me. I laugh. I take you to the gym with me because that's the only way I can get through the hell that is going to the gym. And I laugh. And the hot chicks next to me that are working out, they're looking at me like, what is that dude laughing at? But it's you guys. It's mostly Todd, to be honest. But yeah, Todd the Tiefling.
It's a shame. It's a shame he's not here to get that validation.
Well, that's even better because you can talk all kinds of smack about him.
Exactly. There's no Todd like Todd who's when we're busting his balls.
Yeah. Keep the ninja moves coming, Todd.
So obviously there's a pretty straight line between role playing and acting, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, and I think this is something that we dipped into a little bit when we did our D&D Playstyle episode, where we talked about, look, you don't have to be an actor to play role-playing games, but I'm sure it doesn't hurt. And as somebody who does that for a living, I guess my question is, which is it, a chicken or the egg kind, where you did role-playing games kind of spark the acting bug in you, or did your acting experience make role-playing games a little bit richer for you?
Well, listen, I never knew that I was going to be an actor. I was actually going to school to be a doctor. Yeah. And well, my parents were not happy with my choices, but but the truth is that what got me into the whole acting thing is the role playing. Role playing it's improv, man. We're improving in a sandbox and we're creating stories and storytelling. I've always loved a good story. I don't care if I read it in a book or if I see it on TV or if I create it around the tabletop role-playing game. It's about the story. And nothing was that immersive nature of telling stories through Dungeons and Dragons is really, I think that's the seed where I was like, wow, I really like to perform. I like this, I like the storytelling stuff. And it led to, I can tell you, it absolutely led to the acting. D&D created a monster.
Literally, I think in the movie that you've got coming up with Demigod, is there a trailer out for that?
Yeah, it dropped today, and I actually just put it on my Facebook. I just put it up.
Cool. We will get some links out to that on our socials as well.
And interesting enough, the main actress is Rachel Nichols, who was the main actress in the new Conan the Barbarian with our boy Jason Momoa. So,
no kidding.
Yeah. So I did not know that until I was watching Conan. I was like, oh my God, it's Rachel.
Is that the gal from Continuum? Or
I believe so. She's done a lot of work. Because
I loved Continuum. It was a Canadian time travel cop kind of show that, like a lot of Canadian sci-fi, does really great the first and second season, kind of meanders the third and fourth, but it's one of the few time travel shows that just nails the hell out of the ending, and it is kind of brutal, but they stick the landing on that one. I think pretty well. So then you teach acting classes. I know I've actually seen you post workshops and stuff. So you got any characterization? Like, so let's say somebody's coming to a table, or for the first time, and they want to really give role playing a shot, or there's somebody who's been playing for a really long time and they want to try and take it from a tactical perspective to a little bit more of a role playing perspective. Are there any characterization tips or anything like right up from that acting side? Is there a shorthand they can use to make a character memorable or to make them kind of stand out a little bit?
There is, for me. I tend to find my character's voice first. I want to find that character's voice because once I find his voice, I kind of step inside him for a moment. And I like to find a catchphrase too. Like,
oh wow, that's a good one. Yeah.
Finding a little catchphrase that I use. This I know, you know this, I know this you know. And so that was Fromwick's catchphrase.
Yep.
And I found his voice, and he sounded very Yiddish. But being a gnome, I wanted to do something different. And then if if you're having issues finding your voice, find a template. If there's a character that you like and that inspires your character, use a template. Like if you want to be a barbarian that's the Terminator, of course you could play a barbarian like this, and you get down if you want to leave because I'm going to hack his head off. Instant characterization by finding a template.
Yeah, there's definitely those archetypes that you're absolutely right that you can kind of lean into a little bit. And I don't think, and I think that's the cool thing about definitely a good table. They're not going to give you a hard time about that. And if anything, leaning into those kind of broader strokes, people will immediately get what you're going for. But I love the tip of come up with a catchphrase. I think that is a great way to get a hook into a character. Lord knows Eldrin has majestic as shit. Moyle has roll for girth. Todd, I'm the motherfucker tiefling. Baba, give me a catchphrase for Baba, Anthony. Fate is run away or not the fate. Fate is not the face. I think not the face is a pretty good one for it.
Something along the lines of I'm done with y'all shit. I don't know.
I'm over this. I am over this. Yeah.
Maybe in Baba's arc, he'll find his catchphrase.
Yeah, so we are barreling down on the play session side of things and on the release side of things for the end of Moyle's quest for his stabilizing shard. And next up in that journey, I think we've established is Baba. So there's going to be a trip to Sama, which is our story analog for South America. So if obviously there's stage fright. People get afraid of going out on stage. I've actually done 2 real auditions in my entire life, back when they debuted like the Austin Music Network or whatever. And that is one of the most intimidating experiences in my life. Like I walk in, the lights are shining down, like the baleful eye of God. Like you can't really see the people at the table. You've been in line with 30 people. And they, you walk in, you can still it's not like you're going into a room. It's on stage in front of everybody else. And definitely the stage fright and the nerves kick in those situations. But that's an extreme, obviously, but it's tough to put yourself out there sometimes. And, even with a group of friends, especially with a group of strangers, it can be tough to kind of do some of, to come up with a voice or feel like you want to put yourself out there. Are there any tips for somebody who might be feeling those butterflies or those kind of stage fright nerves going into the group? Is there anything that you coach people on before going into an audition? Like, hey, this is how you kind of center yourself, you calm yourself down, and that would be a tool they could use before hitting the table. Sure.
Well, and at the end of the day, I always explain to people that we're our worst critic, like we're going to be more concerned about the messing up than anybody else. So when it comes particularly to role playing and it comes to, creating character, I say go for it. I say just put it out there, because you can always pull back, you can always adjust, but the hardest part is the start. So, if you have a character idea, like I would go out and I'd play in some of these game store Pathfinder sessions, Adventure League for D&D, that kind of stuff. And man, I'm a role player. I love to role play. And some of these guys, they're power gamers. Some of these guys are min-max guys. And of course, I come to the table with this guy who talks like this all the time. And he's like, and people are looking at me like, who the hell is that guy? And, they don't know. They don't know if this is what I really sound like or not. So they don't say anything to me, and I just do my bit, And I just throw it out there, and by the time it's over, we're all laughing about my corn dog nonsense.
Hey,
but that's part of my fun,
Exactly. As long as you're having fun with it and it's not disrupting anybody else, by all means, swing for the fences. And that's. I cannot remember which podcast it was, but somebody was talking about, like, look, if you want to do a character voice, just start doing it when you go and run errands. Like, the lady at the gas station, unless it's the same gas station you go to every single time, she doesn't know what you sound like. So, if I want to practice my Ognum voice, I drive across town and run errands, and I'm Ognum for all of that. I need to be doing that because it feels like it's been 6 months since we've talked to Ognum, and I'm going to have to remember how to do his voice again.
It's just like when you're memorizing lines for a gig, you memorize lines, you want to get the lines in you. So you want to get the accent, the catchphrase in you. So I say, when you're tying your shoes, run your character. When you're cooking over the kitchen, run your character. When you're doing anything that you can just kind of seek into it to make it natural. It's, you know, you want it to fit like a second skin if possible. So you just kind of fall into it every chance you get. My girlfriend hates role-playing aspects of it, hates it. She's like, combat, yes, role-playing, quiet. I don't hear for hours. I'm like, and her character's named Delinda. I'm like, is Delinda there? Yeah, I'm here. What is she doing? Going to sleep. I'm like, because she hates that.
How did she do in her competition? I know she was just out in Vegas doing.
Yeah, she medaled. She first, second, and 2 4th places. So she kicked a little butt and took a little name.
Nice, man. Yeah, Christian's lady does some professional body. Is bodybuilding the correct term?
Yeah, bodybuilding. She's like a fitness model. She does the bikini categories. It's funny. You look at her, you look at me. I'm obviously not a billboard. She's a personal trainer. I'm obviously not a billboard for her personal training. I like my cheeseburgers, by God. And but you know what? She's really cool about, like, you do your thing, I'll do my thing, and her thing happens to be, you know, looking pretty badass and, you know, walking up and owning a stage like she was carved out of marble. She's amazing.
Well, let's talk about the physical side for a second, because you've done a lot of stunt work.
Yes.
You've done a lot of stunt coordination. What are some examples of the different types of hand-to-hand combat you've done as a stage actor and as a stunt performer?
Well, one of the coolest things that literally ties into the sort of the fantasy realm. I did this thing in South by Southwest called the Game of Thrones: Bleed for the Throne, and it was an HBO activation. It was a promotion that was trying to gain interest for that final season of Game of Thrones there at South by Southwest. And we built Winterfell. And so everybody, there was the Unsullied was there. There were the Northmen were there. You know, just all these different soldiers from the realm preparing to fight the White Walkers. And so we were all getting prepared to fight the White Walkers. And they would invite thousands of fans to come in there, and it was a completely immersive experience. It was like LARPing and D&D, all that wrapped into one with Game of Thrones. My character was the captain of the guard, and I was training the fighters. I was giving them various sword techniques, preparing for the battle. And as people would come in, I would teach them a basic fight sequence. And they would fight one of my stunt guys to prepare for the coming of the White Walkers. And dude, I had a line wrapped around the corner just to pick up a wooden dowel rod and beat the crap out of somebody. It was amazing.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
It was so much fun.
So what we're saying is we can teach Todd how to LARP. Is that remember, we have got a 20 Patreon goal that if we get 20 people signed up, Harlan will cosplay and LARP as Todd the Tiefling, and I will accompany him cosplaying and LARPing as Echo, his shape-changing sword. So, and we will film it, and we will put it on not just the Patreon feed, but everywhere where Harlan can never deny that he's on a D&D podcast or at that point had LARPed. So you did the Game of Thrones things, which is obviously
awesome.
kind of the Western. You also did some time as a pirate in Vegas.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Well, I did. I worked in 2 shows. I did a show in Orlando called Pirates Dinner Adventure. It was medieval times, but pirates. Right?
So that's one in the big skull, right?
Yeah. It was a big skull, and it was a 2-hour show, and these pirates had kidnapped a princess, and then one of the pirates fell in love with the princess and rebelled against the captain. It was this huge civil war on a pirate boat, and it was pretty awesome. And so we did a ton of sword fighting. We had a lot of hand-to-hand with knives, and then one of my characters had a huge wooden hammer that we incorporated into the show. So we were just with belaying pins.
Moyle?
We had a great time. I mean, you can't go wrong with pirates, right?
Wooden hammer, Moyle. You can't go wrong with wooden hammer.
I wish I had a bag of wooden hammers. That would have made things so much easier in that show.
would have saved the day. Well, so then, needless to say, obviously you've had some formal stunt and stage training for stage combat. Then for DMs or players, one of the big things that when you get into when you're playing D&D, one of the things that can kind of make the experience kind of grind down a little bit is when you get into combat, because then it gets very, very turn-based, very procedural.
Right.
And to mix that up a little bit, the descriptions of your actions are what kind of keep everybody engaged and give you a little bit of opportunity to flex a little bit. We recently changed up, and I think this episode that we just published is the first one where the cast start doing really the heavy lifting on the narrative descriptions for their actions in combat. Mm-hmm. So not saying that they need any help, but for all DMs and players out there, what are obviously when you're on stage combat is not real hand to hand. Real hand to hand is much more boring. Right. What are some of the moves or things that you would exaggerate to make sure that the crowd would see it? Or what are some kind of visual flair elements that you guys would communicate to the crowd that maybe could be incorporated into descriptive elements of a D&D melee?
One of the interesting things about stage combat is that obviously in a real fight, you're supposed to move fast.
Right.
If you don't see it coming, that's the best bet. You want to knock somebody out quickly and be efficient. Well, that doesn't work for film, and it certainly doesn't work for stage. So depending on what you need to do, film, it's got to be bigger than in real life, and on stage it's got to be much bigger than film, because you're telegraphing your blows to that person in the farthest back of the house, right? They have to see the same punch that the person on the front row sees, so you have to really exaggerate it. And one of the most interesting things that martial artists that make their way into stunt work, we have to really teach them to slow down, because they're trained to fight and not fight, right? So it takes a little mindset to slow down. In combat for D&D, I like the exaggeration of the blows. I'm very results driven when I'm describing my combats. I'm describing, when one of my characters, Bjorn, he's got his two-handed elven blade, and as he comes over his shoulder and throws it above his head, and he puts his entire shoulder into the blow. And I talk about how it cleaves through the leather armor into the shoulder of his foe, and you can see that the shock in his face as it strikes. So as I'm describing my combat, I'm really about trying to be results driven, so that my characters can get excited about what they're doing. It's so much more satisfying when you're like, when you take your mace and you climb upside the bugbear's head, and you feel the skull concave as he goes crashing to the ground, and they're like, "Whoa, man! Wow!" And so it becomes epic. So I like to make the fight sequences sound epic, because I want them to feel like they're really accomplishing something.
So go big then. Make sure that telegraph the results of the actions, so that there's no question of, hey, that arrow just blew that owl to pieces.
That's it. It's the same advice that I give people for live shows. The further the audience is away, the bigger you want to make it seem. And when you're doing D&D descriptions, you want to go big. You want to really reel people into it.
Well, cool, man. Yeah, you've got the role coming up on. When does the Doom Patrol? Do you have any idea of when that?
Doom Patrol. So, and I can't get into my character. My character.
No, that's cool. Yeah, that's cool.
But I am in the finale.
Oh, cool.
I'm the last couple of episodes of Doom Patrol, and it's a whole lot of fun. I will say that I play a somewhat well-known bad guy.
Nice.
So I get to become a supervillain for a change.
You've got a pretty decent. I know. I said nice way. Had a pretty decent career playing the bad guy, or the heavy, or the tough. I know you're No Ordinary Family. You play a guy in a cop station that takes a shot. You do play an undercover cop in Monster, where you arrest Charlize Theron, or you're involved in a bust where you take down Charlize Theron. There's a couple of scenes of Christian being the tough that kind of walks through the bar, or gets ready to rough somebody up. So, as somebody who's played a lot of bad guys, what's a tip for crafting as a, because you DM a regular group. I know I sat in one of your sessions where you play with a couple of guys from your past of your acting career, a couple of guys from our hometown, Athens, kind of back in the day. What are some tips, having been a bad guy so many times, what are some tips for crafting a good bad guy as a DM?
I like to make my characters despise my bad guy. I want my bad guy I want it to be personal, right? It's one thing to knock off a minion, but it's another thing to knock off a minion that's the half brother of one of the other characters that has been mesmerized. And they're like, well, what do we do? Well, I like to put them in moral dilemmas so that when they have to do something bad, they're like, we're going to kill that guy. I really want them to have something. I want them to have skin in the game.
Right.
So my bad guys, they're pretty brutal. I'm working on something now that I also like to surprise them and come at them from unexpected places. So I have a little story plot now that involves children that gonna really, really do some damage to their trust and security moving forward.
Yeah, there's we've got a killer ventriloquist doll. I think that's the closest thing that we have to a killer kid. So
we have fire babies.
That's true. We did have the fire babies. They were
they have fire babies. I like those immediate.
When I crafted those, what came to mind was the little animated baby from Ally McBeal. So in my head, that's what Eldrin is dropping arrows into.
Definitely would have shot that right away.
Yeah, the Ooga Chaka baby from Ally McBeal. Because he was a creepy little dude, and burst into flames. So yeah, it's interesting, man, because we definitely operate with Give Me the Loot. The villains that are starting to materialize there definitely don't fall into the sympathetic villain category whatsoever. Even though we do try and stay on the comedic side of things or the satirical side of things. I know there is a tend to go, okay, well, you want to identify with the villain, you want to be able to understand it from the villain's standpoint. I'm okay with the villain just being a real douchebag sometimes. You know what I mean? It's okay for the bad guys to be bad. They don't all have to be relatable. So, I mean, you don't want them all to be mustache twirling desperados. But.
Well, I have to say, I loved one of your bad guys. And he was unexpected. I liked the unexpected twist, and he was a little bit original, based on an actual character. You're Roger the Codger.
Oh,
Roger the Codger. Yeah,
so good.
Yeah, Roger the Codger.
I loved it. I loved that bad guy. And this is one of those bad guys. Like, ooh, good job.
Yeah, Roger came out of the idea that the hags as a monster class are. It's very much the Western European old lady witch trope, and it's like, okay, let's take that, let's invert it and into kindly old man, which everybody immediately trusts. Nobody thinks they're going to get jacked by the dude in the cardigan, and then let's just go ahead and go all in with it and make him a Mr. Rogers pastiche. And yeah, that arc still has left. Speaking of Baba, that arc left Mark a literal psychic stain on Baba that he is still dealing with, and is going to very much play into the events of his arcs going forward. He
killed the lady.
Hey, the Codger made me do it.
The Night Codger.
It was Roger the Night Codger. Yes, yeah. And I think hags, going all the way back to Baba Yaga, have are so deeply rooted in the lore that it's one thing, and especially with what we do in the context of Give Me the Loot work, which is very much about taking tropes and inverting them, and then leaning into some tropes, inverting others. It's a cool villain that you can do something with. Is a great example of how, okay, take the basic monster that everybody expects and then just give it the mirror image, and you literally can catch people completely off guard and do something really cool with it. So
absolutely.
The episode that you got to participate in, so the narrative structure of the podcast is targeted around the individual story arcs with a side quest as directed by Ognum, in between each arc, because that was the deal the guys worked out for his services. Well, Christian came on, I think it was almost all the way back to episode 10, and recorded a side quest for Ognum. And then just with the way that our scheduling worked and the pacing and everything, it ended up being like, oh, this is like 9 months later when this is actually going to happen in the timeline. So very shortly, we will finally give your episode the actual number that it deserves, which I think will probably end up being like episode 28 or 29. And yeah, there's going to be some timeline inconsistencies there, guys, but look, a wizard did it. We'll magically wave our fingers around some interdimensional or multiversal dissonance and work our way forward from there. But it was definitely something that was fun to do, but also created the situation. Like, we're going to do one shots with the podcast. We're going to do them either as complete side quests or non-canonical kind of interactions. Because Bob, who was very gracious about coming on and has been incredibly patient about his episode getting out there, there's just no way for me to put it out until we probably another 3 or 4 episodes, honestly, when it comes down to it, because there is such a big kind of background reveal that's associated with who he's playing in that. And it is such a great episode with talk about weird inversion. Because one of the other things we try and do is different genres. And speaking of genres, I know you've done fantasy. I know you've done horror. Have you done a lot of sci-fi? That was the one thing I didn't see a ton of in your resume. It's like,
no, oddly enough, I always play bikers and crazy madmen, that kind of stuff. I'm trying to think of, I did in my early career when I still lived in Texas and I was just getting started. I was an extra on a sci-fi film, and I've never seen it, but everybody had like these crystals embedded in their head, and they could use like psi powers. And so I actually had this green crystal, and I never even knew what I got to do with it. So I don't have a clue. But that's been my sci-fi experience. Like everybody else, I'm trying to get my hands on this Star Wars stuff. There's a lot of Star Wars stuff, and I got a lot of friends that are connected. So I'm hoping something might pan out in the near future if anybody's listening.
Oh, hey man, there's also the D&D movie just wrapped filming. So yeah. It sounds like you might have, but they are doing a D&D TV series that's coming up. Amazon's got the Lord of the Ring TV series coming out, and there's the Wheel of Time TV series coming out. So we definitely, while I think we're definitely past the Game of Thrones era, we're moving into and I think more into a realm of higher, less brutal high fantasy. I think Wheel of Time is definitely a little bit more sanitized than Game of Thrones. It's safe to say. I'm not sure. Lord of the Rings absolutely is. I wouldn't necessarily call Wheel of Time family friendly. Lord of the Rings probably yes. And who knows how the D&D show will end up being. I would have to imagine they're not going to go completely sideways with it, but it sounds like there's going to be a lot of other opportunities out there in the future. So real quick, man, we're coming up on time. So I want to just kind of go around the horn, and we'll do kind of our closeout questions. Real quick, guys, you got anything you guys want to ask Christian about either stunt work or the movie business or role playing or anything of that nature?
Have you ever had to have any of the prosthetics put on you, sit in the chair a long time?
Oh yeah. It's funny because I did this horror movie called Lake Dead, and we had these faces. We look like Neanderthals, and it's funny because the faces that we used were the Geico caveman prosthetics that never got used for the commercial. Everybody talks about the Halloween mask was William Shatner. I was wearing an inverted Geico caveman mask.
That's awesome, dude.
Lake Dead.
That's awesome. Andrew, you got anything else?
I'm genuinely curious how long it took to get those applied on, and what sort of techniques you might have used to keep calm. I know that Jim Carrey, they had to bring in a special forces guy because when he was getting I think it was a Grinch.
Yeah. I've had that put on.
Yeah,
I've worn the Grinch stuff. I did the Grinch for Universal Studios, and I didn't have the Jim Carrey version, and it still took me 3.5 hours to get into that makeup, and it was a completely, trimmed down version.
Were there any flaps to relieve yourself?
Well, yes, there was that.
Smartly built that in.
That was important. The only time I think I've ever had any kind of like take a moment, I got to breathe, is when they do the initial head, the bust, when they're taking they put my head in
the cast of it.
Yeah. And that one, when they completely cover and stick the straws up your nose, you're like, okay, I can do this for a few minutes.
Yeah, that would be panic attack time.
There comes a point. Yeah, but I've done that a couple of times, and the first time was I didn't want to tell them because you're it's that actor imposter syndrome. Like, man, I don't even know if I should be here in the first place, so I'm certainly not going to say anything about this because I'm going to have my inner panic attack, but they're going to think I'm Superman, man.
Well, I'm sure it seems like they're making more of an effort to be more conscious of that stuff on sets. At least that's what you read, is they're making more of an effort to. Have you seen a shift in the kind of the general attention to, and it may just be like the top tier people but the kind of the self-care or making sure that people are completely comfortable with those situations as they go into them, or is that not something that you've seen any impact from or any changes over the last couple of years?
For the most part, listen, I come from a stunt industry as well, where safety is like paramount. So when I'm involved with the stunt stuff, man, safety is the first thing that comes up, no matter what we're doing. And I saw it was at DM Draken about any accidents. Yeah, I've had a few over the years. I've never broken a bone, but I've got more stitches than a quilt, pretty much. But yeah, I have seen in terms of, it depends on the level too of production. Some productions, you have people that are a little bit more actor friendly, and they want to make sure that you're that you're good. And then I've been on some indies where, man, it's go, and they're not thinking. It's not that they don't want to, make sure that you're doing okay, but they've got a schedule they got to keep on, so they're rushing, and sometimes you'll have to say, hey, I need a second, I need to breathe. I gotta, if I don't, I was doing I think it was a movie called The Demented, and literally it was 104 degrees, and I'm chasing this group of people across a field around with 30 other people. Were like these, fast zombies. And it was hot, man. And we're running 100 yards at a time. And I had to say, hey, these guys need a break. We need a break because, man, killing us with the heat and all that stuff. And they're like, oh, and it wasn't that they were trying to. Right. It was that they were, trying to get the shot and get moved through. But once I brought it to their attention, oh yeah, sure. No worries. We'll take a break. So, yeah, I can imagine that some of the location conditions can get pretty tricky sometimes. Because what was the what was the show that you did where like all the electricity had shut down? Oh, Revolution.
Yeah. Revolution. That was like, where did you guys film that? Was that
Austin?
No joke.
Yeah, it was in Austin. I literally had just moved to Los Angeles. I was working in Texas and Louisiana, and I just moved back to Los Angeles for the second time. I was there 3 months, and then I got a call that said, hey, you're going back to Texas. So I went back to Texas for Revolution for another year.
And you're in Atlanta now, working in
I'm here in Atlanta. I teach my acting classes here in Atlanta, and I'm also in New Orleans. So I bounce back and forth, and I just did a bunch of stuff in Los Angeles a couple of months ago. So I'm pretty actively bouncing between LA, New Orleans, and Atlanta right now.
Cool. Andrew, did you have anything else you wanted to ask about?
Not pertaining to movies. So I'll let the other guys ask any questions related to movies.
Anthony, Jamie?
I had a question. So have you ever been able to have an opportunity to take a character that you might have created in one of your tabletop game sessions and like use a bit of him in an acting role?
Oh yeah. Listen, after all these years of creating NPCs and characters and stuff, there are times when, there are times I'm like, man, I don't know what direction to go with this character. And so I will start to experiment, and I've got my stock characters that I go to as a DM. And so I'll try on the skins of my stock characters and see if they work for certain performances. And on more than one occasion, they have. So some of my NPCs show up in the form of a co-star in a couple of TV shows.
Awesome, man. Anything else, Jamie?
No, I think we covered most of mine.
Anthony, you good?
One quick question. Give us a little bit of description of your favorite PC, like your favorite character you've ran.
There you go.
I don't know. I've always been an idealist, and so my favorite character is an idealist. My favorite character was a paladin, name of Aeroth Ravenswing, and his father was assassinated by basically unholy blackguards, and so his world was completely torn down. And so he led a group of terrorists to overcome this evil blackguard government, and it ended in this huge battle. And I'm 19th level, taking on the king of the drow and 3 dragons, and I lived. I couldn't believe I lived. And then the evil god came to face with my character and squashed me like a bug. and as upset as I was, that was the conclusion of the campaign. I died a hero's death, and I became a constellation.
Oh,
You
awesome,
can't beat
man.
that, man.
Yeah, you can't. You absolutely cannot.
That's by far my favorite character I've ever played.
That what? Just out of curiosity, what edition was that? 1E, 2E?
That was. I think that was 3.5. That was the 3.5 edition. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it's interesting, and we're going to start getting into that a little bit starting next week when we do our first or back around to DM splaining. And since it's our first one where we've had the opportunity to do the full deep dive, we're going to be doing multi-classing, which is obviously a topic which needs a little bit of a deep dive. And one of the things we'll be talking about is the difference across editions between how to multi-class in 1E, 2E, 3.5, and 4 and 5. So the differences between editions it's kind of top of mind right now. Well, cool, man. Real quick, let me throw it out to chat. Do you guys have any questions you want to ask Christian before we wrap this sucker up?
I have one other question. Is when you started D&Ding, was there ever a rival gang that you're like, I'm not going to ever go to their group and role play with them or anything like that? And that goes for the rest of you too.
When I started, it was my mom's boyfriend and his Renaissance fair friends. So I think I belonged to them. I was like their property. They wouldn't share me with any other groups. So I didn't know there was another group until I went home and started my own. And it's funny because I played with the same bunch of guys mostly through high school, and then I kind of became a D&D whore. So I was like hooking up with every D&D group. Like I was like DM swinging. So it was pretty awesome. And
living the lifestyle.
Turner and I met swinging on a campaign and back in the old hometown back in 1988.
Temple of Elemental Evil, 89. I think it was 89, 90.
Damn near everybody died or at least was mutilated. So it was a good
no, it did not end well. Yeah, zero level characters. If you think it's tough playing first level, there was a 0 level mechanic, which I think was a really kind of cool concept. And I've actually toyed with, as we, I know it's crazy considering how many more miles we've got to go with Gimme the Loot. There is an ending point. I'm like, and there's something in my head. Like, it'd be really cool to do like a true 0 level character experience in a kind of a narrative format on a podcast. So,
it's funny because back at that time when we were playing that game, the whole result of that 0 level character was we hadn't yet chosen our classes.
Mm-hmm.
And so you could lean whichever direction you wanted to go to and become that class. So it was an interesting experiment.
Yeah, it was a cool concept that you, through crafting your character's backstory, you would actually come up with the implementation of the game mechanic that pushed you in that direction, and it especially worked because we were playing all a group of people from the same little village, and we all had initial kind of leanings. Like I think my guy was prepped to either be a cleric or a ranger or even potentially a druid. I think there were some elements that they could kind of pick and go one way or the other with. But I think it's a really cool idea that you could take that kind of initial narrative structure, and it very much has to be a almost a hey, we're running away from home, and these are the different classes that we stumble into. I think it's got some real narrative potential, and I think it's something that could be really cool to do in a podcast format at some point down the road. So, well, cool guys. Cast, you guys got anything else for Christian? Christian,
I got something for Anthony. You do some acting, don't you?
No, not at all.
No, one of the guys does some acting. Am I wrong, or have I been into the booze cabinet tonight?
Harlan does another podcast. Jamie does another podcast. Moyle acts up a lot.
That's what I'm thinking about.
I think that's what it is. Yeah, that's what it is.
I want to party with that Moyle, man. I want to party with him.
There you go, dude. Give us a shout next time you're in ATX, man. Most of the crew is in the area, in the Texas area. Well, Jamie's our lone Northman.
I'm up for Walker, Texas Ranger right now, so I may be back soon.
Right on, dude. I assume playing a bad guy in Walker. Are you gonna? We do in our Patreon, in our bonus. We do the Supernatural. It's called Hunter's Party. We do a Supernatural rewatch, so we could have a bizarre bubble crossover where one of our characters from Gimme the Loot is arrested and beat up by the guy who I have referred to as the absolute worst more times than I can count on our Sam's the worst. Sam Winchester is the worst. He's the tall, lanky one who is now playing Walker, Texas Ranger, which Christian is up for. Well, that's cool, man. Hey, Christian, I absolutely appreciate you making the time for doing this. Everybody, we will get links to Christian's IMDb, the link to his trailer for Demigod up on all our social media, and we'll put that out there. It has been fantastic to have you on. We've got some, you're always welcome to come back next time we do a one shot or something of that nature. You and I have talked about collaborating on some stuff in the future. And so we'll kind of keep an eye on how that develops down the road. But awesome, man. I really appreciate it. Thanks everybody for joining us. And as always, hope you enjoyed the show.